Hi, everybody.
I really appreciate you doing this. And I think that your experience in theater and coaching and a lot of type of shows and movies can spread a bit of light on how to work in US.
Um, the theater thing came because Jon Bernthal and I, were in this HBO show that you mentioned, The Pacific, and we were shooting in Australia. And after a few months in the northeast of Australia, we moved the production down to Melbourne. And him and I, on our first day in Melbourne, we walked the entire city for like 7 hours. And one of the things we talked about was how could we imagine if we got to a place in our careers where we were well known enough, or one of us was well known enough, that we could start a theater company and do the theater we wanted. And we just had a couple of strikes in LA there was an actor strike. Prior to that, there was the writer strike. And in the course of that strike, I'm also a member of a theater company in Los Angeles, and my friend and I decided to throw a benefit to raise money for the crew, for people who are out of work. And I called Jon and said, "You're going to be in this. You have no choice." And it went very well. And then Jon turned to me and said, let's I think it's time for us to do this. It's definitely a lot of work to get theater up properly in California, but our goal or our mission for the theater company is every dollar of every ticket sold we give to a public high school theater department that's in that area. And it is something that AI, I think, can't replace, or at least hopefully not in our lifetimes. So, at some point, I'm sure there'll be some fully autonomous creatures, but I'm hoping that I never see it. And then the other thing is I think to be an actor in LA and to be an actor in New York, obviously, with certain actors, things go really fast and you get these big, beautiful careers, but you really do have to be prepared to do anything, in terms of theater, film, television, or what have you, because it is it's a difficult and competitive world. And I think for most people who want to be actors, we're usually better people when we're acting than when we're not. At least I am. And so trying to find avenues in which to do that, I think, is super important.
And what was your first paying job as an actor in theater or film?
My first paying job in theater, like my first real paying job, was a children's theater tour about slaves escaping to the North during America's slave days. And we toured that all over the Northeast of the country. And it was really interesting because we hit a couple places that were quite rural. And it made me realize the sort of importance of theater, because there was a kid whose family were in, I don't know if you guys know what the KKK is, but it's a very white supremacist group that's pretty horrific. And we went to one very big school and in a very rural area. So it served a huge area of kids. And the principal said, we know of at least 5 KKK families, like openly and they were told that slavery was a myth and that it had never happened in the country. So America's a tricky place. And so that was my first paying theater job. We toured all over the place. I think I made $250 a week and was thrilled. And my first television job was a commercial where I got into a fight with a cartoon character named Yogi Bear. That was
the commercial. What is that?
It was for, there's a television channel here, I don't know if it's called the Cartoon Network, that plays old cartoons, and they were doing a promotional commercial for it, and I played the security guard at the Cartoon Network, I think, and Yogi Bear forgot his ID, and so I got into a fight with Yogi Bear, and that's how I started my career. And the shame washes over my face.
I watched some of your interviews where you were sharing the story of how you got into the being a reader
Yeah.
for people on castings, and I wanted to see kind of what is your take on the importance of finding the right reader for
Oh,
doing the
well,
self tapes.
this is what I would say. I think that, you know, I as an actor miss the days of us going into the room and auditioning with a director and a casting director. And it's happening a little bit now. Like there's a little bit of it happening, and there's some of it happening on Zoom. And in those instances, you don't have a choice of a reader. So I always tell actors, when you're preparing something, if that's the situation you're in, make sure that you've crafted both performances, because you don't know what you're going to get. But with self tapes, you know, as much as they can be frustrating, they can also allow you to really kind of carve out your own performance. And I think that starts with having a reader who knows what they're doing. Like another actor, I don't think gender necessarily matters, but if the scene is with a woman and you have the opportunity to have a woman read with you, if the scene is with someone non-binary and you have a non-binary friend who can read off camera, I don't know why you wouldn't. The other thing for self-tapes that's different than being in the room is props, really kind of creating a scene or an environment you don't have to do, but you can. If you go into a room in the States and you're drinking a can of beer and you bring in a can of beer, it turns everybody off in the room. I don't know why. But if in a self-tape, I crack a beer and I drink it, no one has a problem with it. It makes no sense, but it's just a fact. So having a reader who knows how to act, someone you trust and can listen and respond to, I think is kind of a massive bonus when making a self-tape. The other thing, and this is just my own personal opinion, if you're an actor who's been trained and you know what you're doing, 3 to 5 takes a scene. It's always take 2 or 3, sometimes 4. But I think actors can get really, really aggressive in judging themselves, overdoing it, beating themselves into it. And then I think the other thing that can do, if you're auditioning with some regularity, is it can really create a lot of fatigue of not wanting to do it because it feels so exhaustive. The other thing is if you use other actors to be your reader, then they will do, and you will have a community of people who can do this for each other. And to be honest, all of my students, and I think in my school we have like 60 now, they are on group text threads all the time, and constantly I'm seeing like, hey, I need a reader for this, and hey, I need a reader for this. I think it makes a really big difference if you get to actually have a listening and responsive kind of experience with another actor.
Did you ever audition for European project? Like, do you see the difference in the way the casting directors approach the casting?
So this is a tricky thing with that, right? And it's funny because I just found something out that I'm going to try and take advantage of, which is most European projects require an actor to have an EU passport, or perhaps London, so it's very difficult for Americans to get EU. I've worked in Europe on American projects, but we don't audition for them much. So I just found out that my mom technically was born in Germany, and I guess Merkel a few years ago put a law in that said if your parent is born there, you can get a passport. So I may just get myself a German passport. I'll say this. I worked in Australia. We shot the Pacific in Australia. And now obviously it's self-tape, so it's different. But in Australia, when you would go into the room, the casting director would be like, all right, let's do this one time with the words. And then you'd do a scene like 4 or 5 times, and they would give you notes and they would work with you. That doesn't happen here. It's very rare unless you know the casting director. So you had to come in kind of ready, understanding the script on your own. And I would say the same for self-tapes. It's very rare to send a self-tape in where you will get word from casting with an adjustment. So I don't know if they do that in Europe. They do it in Australia, and it seems kinder to me, you know.
How do you think it's important to give each other feedback on set with other actors and kind of a little bit
Ooh,
intrusive?
oh, this is a very tricky question. When I worked on Castle, one of the most refreshing things I ever saw is after my first take, John Huerta, who I knew from another project, was like, "Hey man, this is a goofy show. Like it's funny. You can go further." And then I watched them all give each other notes if something worked or not. I will say that in my career, that might be the only television set I've been on where there was comfort with giving another actor notes. And the only actors who give other actors notes on a television set are usually the leads, and they're usually, pardon my language, assholes. And so it's not really done here unless. Okay, so Jon Bernthal right now is about to open a Broadway play in a week. He's doing Dog Day Afternoon. We've been friends a long time. We work with each other on auditions, all kinds of stuff. John asked me to see his invited dress rehearsal, meet with him and give him notes, which I did. But typically, the best way to give another actor notes on set, if there's a real problem in a scene or something isn't working, is going to your director privately and saying, "Hey, I'm having a problem with this moment," and letting it come from the top down. Because I don't know what it's like on a European set, but people tend to take to that really poorly. I would even say in theater. In theater, I've had, unless if an actor, like I did a Much Ado About Nothing and I was playing Benedict, and there were a lot of young actors who would come up to me and say, "Hey, I don't know what to do with this." No problem. But to offer notes, you better be real gentle and you better be in a status position that says, "Hey," like a friend of mine did a movie with Benicio del Toro, and Benicio del Toro said to him, "I can give you notes and help you, or I can let you do your own thing. You let me know." And my friend, being the smart actor that he is, was like, "No, Benicio del Toro, you can give me fucking notes because you're a genius, you know?" So I would say stay away from it unless someone asks. I did a television show for about 7 months, and we were very close as a cast, a number of us, where we created a safe kind of environment where someone was shooting a scene and they would say, "What do you think?" Or, "Do you have any ideas?" Directors can kind of go any way here. There are directors who don't know how to give notes. And I actually think that's a really important thing to talk about, which is many directors here started as editors or executives or have never taken an acting class or watched an acting class and have no idea how to communicate to an actor. So the amount of times that I've had people just say to me, "So cry there. I would need you to cry." And me thinking, that's the worst fucking note you could ever give an actor, right? Understanding how to analyze a script and understanding how to do your work, regardless of help from a director, is uber important, right? Now, when you get a good director, like I worked with this guy, Craig Zobel, and Craig will whisper directions to each actor in a scene after every take, which makes you listen because you don't know what you're going to get, which was kind of amazing. But then you got directors who are just assholes. And I think someone said to me once that as an actor, you need to have the skin of an elephant, the heart of a lion, and the patience of an angel. And the skin of an elephant is to deal with that, is to deal with brutal, abusive directors or actors who are on an ego trip, or the fact that the business can tell you, I mean, the last 4 months alone, I've had 3 roles that I was told I was getting, and none of them came my way. So to just go, okay, the heart of a lion part is about what we do as artists, is like sharing your guts on screen, on stage, being unafraid. And the patience of an angel is because, like, I have a very good friend who has now become quite well known. He was in that first play with me that we did where we were in a children's theater tour about slavery. He didn't get his first real television job for 20 years. And then all of a sudden, everything went. So to me, knowing how to navigate that and keeping your artistry and also keeping your sense of self is really important.
How important it is for actors to keep training themselves and attend classes and workshops.
This is not just because I run an acting school. My old teacher used to say an actor should either be in therapy or class, but never without both, because you always need to be discovering yourself. That's one part. The other part is, especially in LA, well, New York as well, it can be very hard if the only acting you're doing is auditioning to feel and stay sharp in your process and the work that you're doing. So I think being in class, even if it's not constant, but going in and out of scene classes and things like that, can just help remind yourself that you're an actor, can remind yourself, and also help you stay connected to the love of the work, because the business of the work can be so shitty. Because here there's almost nothing government funded. So everything is for money, right? And so if you're famous, I've lost roles because a writer wanted to cast his friend. And so with that, how do you stay connected to the craft, I think is really important.
What do you think about importance of networking as an actor and like PR in general for yourself?
I think this is a really tricky question. So during the pandemic, I used to run these Zoom classes just to keep community alive. And basically what I did was I would have like agents, managers, famous friends, talented friends, teachers, all do these like kind of like what you're doing here, like a question and answer. And someone asked this, unfortunately he's passed away, but his name was Chris Uvain, and Chris was a very big manager. He managed Margot Robbie, he managed Chadwick Boseman. He had a very big career, but unfortunately was personally haunted. Someone asked him about like Instagram followers and should I work on building my Instagram? And he was like, no, it doesn't fucking matter. Now, if you become an Instagram or a TikTok star, where you have like 10 million followers and everything you do gets 1 million views, that could help your career because you're bringing that. But so I think that on that element, I think actors get really caught up on when you're on a television show or a film that's a hit. Like my buddy's in Sinners, and he had a following, but now that he's in Sinners, he didn't have to do anything. His Instagram is now hundreds of thousands of people, and people will come to you. In terms of networking, I think networking is important. But I think this is really important, how you network. So there are actors who go to the parties. There are actors who, try to get a job at a place where they know producers and writers go or hang out. That never felt comfortable for me, right? The closest, like the most, what's the word? Effective networking I think I did when I first got to LA was I was on a baseball team, like a recreational baseball team, because I was a very good player when I was in college, or decent. And this team was shitty, and my friend was on it. And then I found out that all of the guys on the show, on the team, were like, one was the vice president of CBS television. One wrote all the Avengers movies. One wrote on 2 television shows. I developed personal relationships with them independent of the business, but work came through a number of them because they knew I was an actor and they'd seen my work. It is a business of relationships, and knowing people is important. But I will say this idea or this belief that your friend's going to give you a role is kind of a false one, in my experience. It can happen, but it can happen as much as putting an audition down. The one thing that, in terms of networking, I think creating your own work, creating like real content, shooting things, even at first just to kind of get your face out there, I think that that can be more helpful, you know? But I think a lot of people spend a lot of time trying to network properly, you know? But like I watch it with Jon. Jon's famous now. His networking happens because he's Jon Bernthal. And because of that, what happens is people, you know, when I go to opening night of his play, you know, like Ben Affleck and blah, blah, blah are all going to be there. Jon didn't build those relationships. Jon did his work, and those relationships came to him. And I think it works better and is more honestly done that way and more effective.
You think the actors from Europe and like Eastern Europe as Ukrainian actors can get into the US projects? How does it work in terms of castings? Like, is it how hard it is?
Well, I think the number one answer is yes, right? Especially if you're trained and you have craft. I think there's a lot of people in all over the world that try to do this who don't. I will say this: learning how to speak unaccented English, working on some dialect reduction stuff will make you a more malleable actor, or at least being able to do, you know, I do a lot of dialect work, right? I've played Irishmen and Brits and this and that. I always say with a face like this, if I can't do dialects, I'd never fucking work. So I would say that, so if you're Ukrainian, can you do a French dialect? Can you do British? Can you do Spanish? Can you do other European things that are fit within your type? But also being able to at least soften your dialect so that you can play with the sort of syntax and language of American work is going to help. Because yes, you can get work in dialect, no question, but it will limit what you can audition for often, you know? And so like I've seen a lot of Russian, Ukrainian, Polish actors who only get to audition for Russian gangsters. You know, if there's a Holocaust movie, good to go. Eastern Europeans are always fucking castable, right? But yes, 100%. And also working in Europe, you know, like a very dear friend of mine is a Slovakian filmmaker, and her film is one like it's called Otek or Father, and it's won all these awards this year at Venice. It got a 10-minute. Now she's as a filmmaker, as her film got a 10-minute standing ovation at Venice. Now all of a sudden American companies are like, oh, maybe we should have her direct. And some of the actors from that film who do, especially the father and mother, who do beautiful work, they're Slovakian, but if they can handle English fluently enough or easily enough, well, now they're a bit of a commodity because they've been in a hit film that, you know. So yes, and also be prepared for it by being able to be kind of malleable, I would say.
And the agents, how does it work for international actors to get signed with the US agent?
This is a very tricky and tough question. I would say this: the easiest way is going to be by being successful where you are, or successful in and around your region where you have an agent in Ukraine, or, you know, or somewhere near you. Because a lot of those agents will have relationships with British and American agents. And a lot of times I've seen through England being a sort of soft intro into America, but not necessarily. The market can be so flooded that it's difficult just to like send your stuff to them, because they're getting thousands of those probably daily. That is a place where if you moved to LA or you moved to New York, that's a place where networking will work. And I think it works kind of like this: you get a job working at a bar or at a restaurant or at a place where actors work, or in a class, and you're in an acting class and you're doing unbelievable work, right? And with that great work, your classmates like, you're fucking great. asking that guy or that person, like, hey, do you have an agent? Would you mind passing my reel, my headshot, my materials to them? The amount of my students who have done that for each other, the amount of friends that I've done that for, who I know are amazing actors, that's a networking thing that I think can work. If what's happening is you're like, I need to get out of here, I want to go act, and I want to go someplace that feels safe. Not that America is the best place in the world these days, but I would say that kind of networking is gonna help you. There are also, and these are a little controversial, but there are kind of, in both New York and LA, there are these sort of pay to play kind of things where you can go to these workshops with agents and casting directors, and people pay to go to them and they work in front of the agent. The thing is if you're really good, like if you're really good at what you do, you will stand out in those rooms. You just kind of need to get a lay of the land to know which ones are legitimate and which ones are just taking money. But I would say the easiest way to get an agent in the States is by doing great work in Europe that gets noticed, and having an agent make that introduction for you. The next best way would be when you move here to get in a legitimate class at a legitimate studio where the actors are working and the work is really good. And I think there you can find some movement into representation.
Anyone has a question? Yes, Sophia.
I'm almost finishing my university in Kyiv. I'm looking for university in LA and New York. Do you know about any grants for Ukrainians or any programs, grant programs by talent? I don't know.
I think that they exist. And I think since the war started, I think there's been a lot of, especially amongst the artist community, you'd be hard pressed to find an actor or anyone of an artist of any kind who doesn't support you guys here, regardless of the current administration. So with that, I would say that I bet they exist. And I think probably starting with a simple Google search would be helpful. The same thing would go. Now, are you looking for an acting school or a university?
Yeah, and I have another question. Maybe you can recommend, because I think the easier way to live and play and be actress abroad, it's studying. It may be a university or acting school. What acting school, like not like master degree?
Yeah. So yes, I think you would find that getting a student visa would definitely help you get in here. And I think that auditioning for some of those programs, there's the Actor Studio in New York, takes a lot of foreign students, for sure, and will offer and help you with getting visas and things like that. Same thing with AFI. If you're a filmmaker, they take a lot of foreign students. There's also graduate programs like some, whether it's Juilliard or Yale or NYU or UCLA or USC, those schools, I will bet that many of them have foreign student grants and loans and processes, because a lot of times they're able to get more money for their university the more eclectic their student body is. So, and I can pass my information on to Julia for you guys if you have like specific questions, and then I can at least, whether it's me or people I know, to try and get you far more specific answers. But I think getting here on a student visa and getting yourself into a graduate program or an acting program at a university in general would be an easier way to get in. And if you go to one of those better acting schools, right? University of North Carolina School of the Arts, Juilliard, University of San Diego at the Old Globe. There's a number of them that are considered like really strong acting programs. Many times at the end of your program, they will have showcases for agents and managers and casting directors. And because you're coming out of NYU or coming out of UCLA, very often it will be much easier to get representation here. I'm thinking of these 3 schools, and I have friends who teach at USC's acting school, and I have one person I know, if not 2, that teach at UCLA. And then in New York, there's an acting studio, the Esper Studio, which is one of the best acting, like private acting schools in the country. And that's run by my mentor and his family since he passed. And they may have international student like aid. So, and I'm actually seeing one of those family members tonight, so I can get more detailed information.
Can you recommend like any specific classes and schools that people can, like, from Europe travel for 3 months, for a month, to go to like courses?
Like the Esper Studio does a 6-week Meisner intensive every summer. They have a few of those. That's really good. I think in LA, Howard Fine has some like shorter programs. I would say you could always come and take class with me, but because I'm such a small operation, I don't think I'm going to have like international aid, And if you're coming to like in LA, there's a teacher named Ivana Chubbuck. She's not my favorite teacher, but she's very well connected. So if you excel in Ivana Chubbuck's class, very often you can very often Ivana has access to agents and managers and things like that. So there's HB Studios in New York, there's Ivana Chubbuck, and there's the Actor Studio, which was like, and then in LA, and Esper, I think I said that. And then in LA, Ivana Chubbuck, Howard Fine. I'm trying to think what the other big acting schools are. There's Leslie Kahn, but I think they're not great classes. But they might, because they're quite a big operation. Leslie Kahn might also have some help or assistance. And I've definitely seen, more Ukrainian actors in LA than ever before since the war started, which makes sense because who wants to be in a war zone? It's scary.
It's really it's scary, and the scary is language, because I'm working with my tutor and I'm working on pronunciation, and I'm not confident because if they think that I have a bad accent and maybe I need to be quiet and maybe I need to not talk with them, because it's because of not confident.
Right. And so and the thing is that that could get in the way. So what I would tell you is this. Like one of my dear friends, great actor, we have a thing we say to each other when a role comes up that we're scared of. And I'll say, if it scares you, you got to do it. Right. And I would say the same thing about about sort of allowing yourself to be brave and fall on your face speaking English. Like, go for it, move forward, because if you can fluently speak, you don't have to get rid of your accent, but if you can speak fluently and easily, even if it's accented, there's just more opportunity for work, and there's definitely a better opportunity to get represented because your agents will go, oh yeah, we can send her that. So, like I have a very good friend who's American, but she's fluent in Russian. Her parents escaped the Soviet Union when, he was a journalist and he used it as a way to get out. And Izzy can speak with a perfect Russian dialect, and she can speak Russian like a Russian. She's desperate to do work. She just got a big job where she gets to be in an American accent. But the amount of work that she has done, where she was on a television show called Shameless for 6 years, playing a Russian, because she's like one of 2 women in LA who can play that role believably. And I'm going to tell you something. People in LA don't know the difference between a Ukrainian dialect, a Russian dialect, between Ukrainian, between Russian, between Polish. Like, if it feels Eastern European to them, you're gonna be a better actor because some of that stuff is just coming for free because of where you're from. So if it scares you and you want to be quiet, you got to be like, it scares me and I've got to do it, because you've got to feel comfortable and confident speaking in English so that you can show up in your audition, so that you can be present, that you can be at risk, because that's your number one currency here, is each one of you are completely individuated and different. And as an actor and as an acting teacher, I want to see you. I want to see you at risk, even behind a dialect or a character. So good that you have a coach. I'll give you another hint that a friend of mine who does dialect work that I think will be helpful. Find an American. For women, I always say Natalie Portman. Natalie Portman has like the most unaccented. She doesn't sound like she's from New York. She doesn't sound like she's from the South. She just has like a very easy American dialect. And in the in-between, watch interviews with her and then try to mimic her. And then record yourself and listen and hear the difference, and get really technical about tongue placement, about how much your mouth opens, so that you can make it just like you do in voice and speech work in drama school. You can make it something that you can tackle. I grew up in New York. I talked like this my whole life. I had a very thick New York accent, and I had to learn how to soften that and let that go. I still feel like I'm from New York to most people, but I don't only play New Yorkers. So just get really technical and make it fun. And also find another actor who is also struggling to learn English, and you guys go get a beer, and for that hour, you only speak to each other in English. And at least you're doing with someone else who's going to fall on their face. And if you're like, I don't know how to say it, pull out your phone and ask fucking Siri or whoever or Alexa to say, how do I say this in English? And then say it in English, and get through an hour a day, 2 hours a day, and then leave it alone, so that you don't kill yourself or your mind and you just melt.
Tell us about your courses and what techniques do you use? What is it based on? And what are your students are kind of learning from it?
I teach a 2-year, like the full 2-year Meisner training program, which starts with an exercise, a very simple exercise called repetition, and grows into something far more expansive, and then gets into script and character work. So I do that. That's like that's the basis of how I was trained, and at the heart of most of what I do. It really teaches actors how to really listen, really respond, and hopefully and usually drop most, if not all, of their defenses. So whether it's my brother, who's super tough and is like, fuck you, and he meets everybody like this, and that's how he is, which is his defense, or me, who's like, hi, I like everybody. Both are defenses, both are useful. How can I get those out of the way so I can get to sort of the core of who I am? I also teach scene study classes where we work scenes for 4 weeks at a time. We switch partners every 4 weeks, and that's an ongoing class that people come in and out of. You work every class. The best thing about my classes is my students love each other, that they embrace each other. No one, speaking of your first question, nobody gives anybody notes in that room except for me, right? I don't ever want an actor in my class telling me how to act. I'm never going to feel safe. But they love each other and they support each other. They all help each other with their self-tapes. Multiple numbers of them have introduced each other to agents and managers, or called them and said, I'm shooting something. Could you play this role? And so because of that, I think they feel held by one another. And I think that getting a community that isn't just the Ukrainians in LA, so you can hide and speak, and speak a language that you're comfortable in, I think is really important. So for me, I've seen study classes, I have a training program, and then every now and again, I'll do like audition workshops, and which have become kind of self-tape workshops to help you with simple fixes and things, and then dialect classes because, like I said, I have a face like this. So I'm good at them and I enjoy teaching them because they're fun.
I had another question about preparing for the role. When you get a script and let's say it's just casting, you don't have access to a director, you don't have any answers from the casting director to explain what to do with it, and you have a piece of a 1 page. How do you approach preparing yourself for any type of scene? Like, what is your technique of preparation?
There's a couple things, like on a technical level. A lot of times when you get a scene like that, there'll be like above and below something that's X'd out. I read everything. I'll read the breakdowns for the other characters to see if there's hints or clues. And if I'm really, really puzzled, I may like Google search to see if I can learn anything about the project. But everybody in the business is aware that we're blind. Like right now, I'm shooting a comic book television show, and I literally only get the pages that I'm in. So I had a fight with someone the other day, and they had this character come and like look at me menacingly, and I had to ask the director on set, do I know him? And he was like, you do. And I was like, well, we haven't shot that yet, and I don't have any dialogue in one of those scenes, I guess. So it really comes down, I think actors have to be detectives. And I think that when you get a script, you really have to first use the sort of left side of your brain. And what I will do is pour through, what do I want? What is it my character wants? What is my relationship? Really basic, simple things. What's my relationship to these people? Or what are the beats? Where does what I'm doing and what I'm after switch and change? Where are the beat changes? What are, depending on what language you use as an actor, what's the action or the motivation, or, why am I saying this now? What is this? What do I need from the other person? And then I do emotional homework, so I tend to play a lot of roles where really fucked up things happen to my character. My wife died, my brother, this or that. So then I'll do the imaginative preparatory work on what those people mean to me, where that sits in my body, etc. And then if I've done that right, and it's not just intellectual, but it's also in my body, I try to throw it all away. I try to show up, listen and respond with my reader, and try to be as free in the work as I can be. If I'm wrong, it doesn't matter. Like the amount of times I auditioned for the Hobbit movie, and the script was I had 2 pages. I knew nothing else. I read the book. This wasn't in the books. I didn't know what was going on. But clearly there was something with the king that I didn't like. And I was working on it with my friend, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? And then he went, I got it. I said, what? He goes, the king is sick. The king's sick. He's like mentally sick. He's deranged. And so everything you say, he could just flip out and go crazy. So you've got to really navigate. So I taped it like that. I got a call back. I went in to so then I went into the room to meet them. And the woman said, great choice. It's not what's going on at all. But it showed me that you know how to, that you made choices. And so let what the script says to you speak to you, and act from that. The other thing is that's a skill. And one of the ways you get better at that with auditions, because auditioning is like a different game. Auditioning is like smoke and mirrors a lot. You don't have everything. You don't have all the information. The more you see sides, the more you see those little pieces of script, the more your brain will start going, oh, wait, this is this and this is this. Because story structure, I don't care where it is very similar most of the time. So when I teach, if someone brings in a scene I never saw, I listen to the first 2 pages. And I'm like, so she's your sister, but she slept with your husband and you guys haven't spoken in, what is it, like 3 years? And they'll go, yeah, how do you know that? And I can hear it just in the structure of the story. And that's just from years of doing it. So if you're helping each other with auditions, or when you're off and you don't have one, but you have your friend's audition, work on it. Make a tape of it. Take a look at it. See if it makes sense. If you made an audition and you didn't get it, and then the movie or the show comes out, watch it and see, did I miss something, or did I just not have the information? But don't try to get it right. Bring to an audition your most honest and most vulnerable and open sort of take on it. And the more that you work with script, the closer you will be to what's going on in it. If that's what I would say.
Yeah. Well, here's sometimes, most of the times, for actors is like given 1 paragraph, and they have zero idea about anything else. So like go figure it out. And there's not only not enough information, it's not even one page. So these things are very scary for most. Like, what do I do with it? Like, it's just like
Yeah.
2-3 lines. How do I prepare myself for this? So like making choices is risky, and it's important to risk, but also which way do you risk? Which side do you take not to fuck it up?
So I would say this: don't make a choice that's big or crazy just to be big or crazy, because they'll notice it. Make sure you are as best you can with that teeny bit of information serving the story. There's a television show here called The Pit, and I don't know if it's over there, but it's real. I think it's really good. And I was watching it the other day, and a friend of mine, he popped up on the show, and I sent him a text that was like, "Your work was amazing. It was so easy. It was just you." And he said, "Scariest thing I've ever done." He wasn't hiding behind character. It was just like his grizzled ass showing up and being in the scene. So some of that might simply come from knowing what the project is, Like if I'm doing a Marvel superhero show, I know that there's an almost Shakespearean or Greek tragedy size to it. It can be big. But if I'm doing something like The Pit, I've got to be emotionally connected, and I've got to be simple. So just knowing like the tone, if you can get it or you can find it, and then the other thing is, like I said, you won't fuck it up if it's coming from your honest place, because you may be wrong for a role, but casting here will be like, oh, this isn't the right role for her, but she's really good. And you will find yourself auditioning for them again and again.
What is your experience with improvisation in castings and acting?
In film, all the time. Not all the time, but in film, there's more space for it, right? Like it's one of Jon Bernthal's sort of strong suits. He will go for it. In theater, none at all, unless the director's been really specific with you. I do it in auditions. Like if it's a comedy, one thing I will know, like when I auditioned for The Pacific, my character, part of my audition was to tell a joke. There was a joke written, but as they do in TV and film, there was like a little jump cut right in the middle of the joke. And they skipped like what would be like, it was stupid, but they skipped like 3 sentences or 4 sentences of the joke. And when I was going in the room, I was like, there's no way I'm going into this room telling 3/4 of a joke. So I wrote out the rest of the fucking joke and I did it. Or a lot of times I'll add like a little button. People call it like a button on the end of the scene, a little joke because the other thing is they've read this script, they've seen it a million times. I don't do it a lot, but I do it a little. Just if I have an idea that like really sings to me. And the same thing with like dramatic stuff, sometimes you just sometimes there are moments that need to be filled. Like if there's a physical fight in a scene, I'm not going to choreograph an entire fight, but I might grab someone and tell them to shut the fuck up, because it gives the energy of me punching them. So I'll do little things like that because it gets me alive and it also, I think, lets them know I understand what the moment is and I'm not afraid. So I shot something the other day where I get attacked and it's pretty brutal. And we were going over the fight choreography and it's really dark what happens. And then the director, who was British, came out and he's like, now, when we're doing this, and I was like, yeah, we're going to fill it. And then they yelled action and I was like, get the fuck out of the. And I started kicking and it was all improv. And then he came out and was like, oh, you're all right. Are you all right? And I was like, yeah, it was acting. And he was like, oh, it's fucking brilliant. So like, if the moment needs it, fucking go for it. If someone has a problem with it on set, like when we were shooting The Pacific, we improv. We were the characters. We lived in them for months. But there was one day where I changed a line, and the director was like, say that line exactly like it was written, because Tom Hanks wrote it for you. And you were like, yes, sir. Right? So they'll let you know when it's too much. But I'd rather make the mistake and go for something that's happening in the moment and capture that rather than being afraid of it. Don't rewrite the whole fucking scene, then you're going to offend your writer and on TV, your writers or your producers. But don't be afraid to add little things that make it yours.
And what about the theater and theater work and like restarting the whole industry of theater? Like for Europe, there's a lot of little theater plays going on, not
Yep.
a lot of big theater here. So I think what you're doing with Jon Bernthal is really important, kind of starting moving people around the theater and trying to do something important for the industry and for theater specifically. What does it take to restart or revive the theater, and how interested are people around it?
I mean, look, we found them to be very interested. It didn't hurt that I had John in the show, let's be honest. But also, like, I've been in New York shooting for almost 2 weeks now, and I've seen 4 plays. There's tons of theater here. And in LA, it's small, like the theaters are smaller, but there's a very vibrant theater scene. And I would say that's another thing that can help. There's a networking thing that can help you here as well, which is when you get out to LA or New York, finding the smaller theater companies that you can offer time to be an usher, to help clean up, whatever, and you can build a relationship where you can get yourself on stage. It's going to make you a better actor. It's also, if you're at a legitimate theater company, it definitely can help. It can help you be seen by agents and casting directors. I would say, if you're coming to LA or coming to New York and you're like, I can't get a job and I can't do this, if you can find a small theater and put up a play and then put up another play, that's how David Mamet's career and a lot of those Chicago actors started. So it can be difficult. You need a little bit of money, but if you're doing it on a small scale and you're doing something that you've written, what else are you doing? It was not easy building the Ojai Theatre Festival, and we're in the process of picking plays for our second season now. None of it's easy, but I found people to be really hungry for it. Theater in general is very often financially like a losing proposition unless something's a really, really big hit. But at the same token, great theater, people are desperate to see. Like, you want to give us a play about what it's really like to be in Kyiv with all this going on, or to come from further east in Ukraine. During the pandemic, there's a Belarusian playwright who was literally hiding from, Poroshenko, and he wrote a play, and his translator to English was one of my students' uncles, and we wound up doing it on Zoom, and other companies were doing it all over the place, and it went kind of viral in Belarus, and was like, tell us that story, honestly, whether it's a short film, if you want to, because I don't think people know it, and I think people would be quite hungry for it. So if you're coming, like, do what tell what is it like just to be around your family when trying to deal with the madness of Putin, or whatever. There's so many details of it that we don't know. We just get broad strokes from the news. I would go see that play, and I think a lot of people would too.
If the script that I got and the scene, suppose that this role can be played in completely different ways, like, for example, 2 or 3, is it appropriate to send 2 or 3 different takes?
Yes, I would say 2, right, is probably your best bet. And I would only be sending 2 takes per scene if you, like you're saying, you have 2 completely different ways of playing it. I think it can be quite powerful, to be honest. And and if it's 2 scenes, I think then you just want to play around with your edit. Does it go take the first scene this way, then this way, and then the second scene this way, then this way? Or do you want to present one take versus another? And I think all of those choices are really just about, for you, what artistically makes the most sense. For me, I would go 1 then 1, because I'd want them to see both. Because a lot of times they'll watch a little bit of your tape. But 100%, if you have 2, don't send 2 takes if they're like the same. But if you have 2 very different takes, definitely do. I would definitely send them for sure.
Thanks. What is the real chance staying in Europe? I'm staying in Germany, for example, to get roles somewhere abroad. I mean, in US, it doesn't matter where exactly, just by self-tapes. And are there some resources or platforms where can I find such opportunities to try?
So what I would say is, like, for a small role, none, right? But for a major role in something, and very often, if they're looking for someone Ukrainian or they're looking for someone Eastern European and they don't have a great casting pool, if a production gets your tape and they want you, they will arrange your visa. As long as your passport is, they will help you through that process, and very often, as part of your deal, pay for it. It's going to be easier to be cast if you have a visa, if you have an O1. It's going to be easier to be cast. It's going to be easier to be cast if you're in the union, if you're in SAG, but it's not required, you know? So it really just depends. And the other thing is, like, if you're in Europe, another thing, like, for instance, if you work with a director there and that director loves your work and she wants you in her project, chances are she'll be able to fight for you to get in that project. So in terms of specific places to go for those opportunities, I don't know, but I might be able to put you in touch with some actors who've gone through that process, be they European or Australian, because I think the process is similar for a lot of them.
It would be very helpful. Thanks a lot.
I'll do the best I can. You know, I have a network, so I can just reach out, and I can also do it with all of my students. Like, I have 2 Polish students right now who've one came from Ireland and one from Poland, and they've gone through this process. So they might have a really good idea. So I'd gladly put you in touch with them. That'd be easy. I'm their teacher. They'll do whatever I tell them to do. And the other thing that I would say is like, if it's written in English, right? This is what I did for Teresa Novotná, who's my Slovakian. I don't know why I'm pointing this way. My Slovakian filmmaker friend. When she was writing the treatment for her film, she sat down with me and my friend, who is now her husband, and was like, we went through her treatment, we went through her script, and we were like, this American English would say it like this. If you mean this, someone who's fluent, right? And who speaks both languages, and just smooth those things out so that it's an easier transition. So I think getting in festivals like that would be helpful. I know that travel and visas are a whole different thing, and that stuff is above my pay grade, but I can try and at least put you in touch with people who know more about it.
What was your best and worst advice you ever received, and from the actors that you played with, from any directors?
The best advice I think I've gotten is that you're enough. I think one of the things that actors do a lot is they want to play a role how they think production wants it, how they think a director wants it. And I think as an artist, recognizing that you're enough, that there's no other person like you, and that the more open and vulnerable and present you are in your own skin, the more singular and interesting your auditions and your work will be, I think is really important. And that includes doing transformative character work, that you're enough. I think the worst advice I was given, I mean, my brain goes, I don't even remember, because I don't think I think at some point I stopped listening. What is the worst advice I was ever given? I don't know. I think I just blocked that shit out. I mean, that may be the best advice I could give you, you know, is I think okay, here's also really, really good advice. As an actor, you have to, and this is hard, you have to get yourself out of a beggar mentality, an idea of, oh my God, please, please, please. right? That can happen for money, that can happen for roles you want to take. Understanding where your level of integrity is and what you have to offer. That doesn't mean when you have no credits being like, I'm a fucking star, but it is also knowing, like, I know my worth, I know my value. I think it's important for women because I think there are a lot of really shitty people in this business who have taken advantage of women's bodies, women's autonomy, and understanding that, like, you don't get that ability to say no can be quite powerful, right? Whether it's to a role, to an audition, or to someone who wants you to do something on a set that you're not comfortable with. Bad advice, I'm sure I've been given it, and it literally just has no fucking place in my brain anymore. You know, my brain will give me bad advice. You know, it'll tell me I ain't shit. So I try not to listen to that, let alone whatever this guy said. You know.
Well, is there any book that you can recommend for actors? Is there any resources to watch, or maybe movies to watch to kind of get inspiration from?
I mean, look, books on acting are weird. I think Bill Esper's books are really good. I think there's a practical element to them that breaks down what his process was as a teacher. But I think acting is something you do in a room. I think acting is something you do viscerally. I would say, I mean, there's so many great films. And I would say watch films that move you, watch films that scare you, watch films that make you laugh, but also have other things in life you love to do that bring you joy. Because I think it can get really singular as an actor where you're like, I'm just doing this, and you stop living your life. Like, go see dance, go see art, you know, go out in the woods, you know what's going on in the world, but I just deleted Instagram off my phone. And for the last month, I've been this much happier. Stop looking at TikTok. It's all bullshit, you know? That's just my own opinion, but I think it really does sort of suck our energy or limit it or use it as a tool. But I mean, shit, I could tell you to watch The Godfather, Goodfellas, The Princess Bride. My friend's movie Otek is amazing. I mean, there's so many films, you know, just see things that inspire you and figure out what inspires you. You know, the better you know yourself, the better chance you have to work.
Do you think you're gonna ever do the video classes again? Not if the pandemic or war is coming, but in general, if you'll be open to do it.
Like, I would do something like this for sure, and I would bring in some of my people who are as guests, but I know there are people who teach acting over Zoom, and I think there are probably some who do it well. I started trying to do that, and then I was like, I can't teach acting this way. I can teach the business, and I can let other actors share their processes, and I think that would be helpful. All right, thank you guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
All right, you take care.
Thanks a lot
Bye,
for your
guys.
time.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
Of course.